Hey guys, Dr. Jeremy here. I just wanted to hop on real quick and share a little bit about what I believe is an important topic when it comes to our amazing Tri-GLP drops. And so one of the questions I often get asked is it possible to actually gain weight on our drops? And you may be surprised that the answer is yes. Now notice I didn't say fat, I said weight. So we're going to cover that here in just a second. Also, is it possible to actually feel worse instead of better initially? Again, the answer is yes, that is possible. And it's also possible to be a little bit more tired initially for some, probably just a handful or probably a rare few. But we're going to talk about all those possibilities because we don't want anybody to compare themselves to others. Maybe they're not getting that initial experience that everybody else is and become frustrated. Our bodies are all unique. We're all individual. We all have our own baggage, so to speak, with health issues, and some people are dealing with chronic illnesses, chronic diseases, chronic history of bad choices, and so we have to figure all of that in when we're talking about these drops and the results that we may or may not experience, especially right away. And so one of those things we need to talk about is stress in the body. So these drops will actually help pull somebody out of a stress mode. So we tend to all run on high stress in our busy lifestyles, right? And a lot of us are driving high cortisol levels, and these drops can actually help pull somebody out of that state. And that state, remember, when we're in that high stress state, is very catabolic. It's very depleted, very destructive. And when we lower that stress signal, we can actually improve recovery by the body, right? We can also at that same time temporarily increase fluid retention. That's a possibility. And we may even normalize appetite. And some may even experience a slight increase in appetite for that very reason. And so, we may also experience some fatigue if we're being pulled out of this stress mode. And why is that? Because the body says, you know what? You've been driving me way too hard, and now you need to rest. Okay, so some people may experience initially a little bit of fatigue because their body's saying, hey, I'm going to take these amazing drops and supporting these healing pathways, and we're going to repair. We're going to clean house, and we're going to rest. We're going to repair, and you need to take a break, right? And so that could equal a little bit of fatigue at first, or be perceived as fatigue, when our body's probably just shifting out of that stress mode and now is able to recover and repair. And so that's a good thing. Also, we could have some glycogen and water replenishment. So when metabolic signaling improves, the muscle will actually start to store more glycogen, right? That's the stored form of blood sugar. And glycogen holds fluid, holds water. So each gram of glycogen holds about 3 grams of water. So initially people might experience better energy, better performance, but they might have a temporary weight increase. Again, notice I didn't say fat. Temporary weight increase in the area of water. Reducing inflammation, which we know these drops have the powerful ability to reduce inflammation, and we're seeing that in many people's testimonies. But as we reduce inflammation, the body will actually redistribute fluids. Some people notice less puffiness over time, but we could have short-term fluctuations, including short-term fluid gains or holding on to fluid. But remember, the scale does not show or reflect true fat change. And so I always recommend to not get on that scale every day, right? I always tell people, take that scale and give it to somebody you don't like. No, but really we should be measuring is a more exact way to start to see some changes, because people will start to lose inches likely before the scale even shows results. Okay, and the scale may even show that you are gaining. Again, that's not fat. We might gain some temporary fluid weight. Another thing is that we're seeing people actually put on muscle, especially if they're active. We do know that these drops inhibit myostatin and activin, and both of these proteins, they inhibit and limit muscle growth, and they promote muscle breakdown. So if we're limiting these proteins, somebody might actually gain a little bit of muscle. Again, what's that going to show up on the scale? That they've gained weight, right? They may interpret that they've put on fat. Again, that's not true. That will never happen with these drops. Zero muscle loss and completely all fat loss with these drops. And so, again, I encourage you to stay off the scale at least frequently. Maybe weigh once a week on the scale, but measure frequently. Take pictures. Pictures also give you more truth than the scale will. And I think that's important to know. So another thing that some people can experience is a detox response. And so, when we support these amazing pathways in our body, the GLP-1, the GLP-2, the GIP pathway, the body says, you know what, I'm going to take some of this amazing healing energy that's coming into my body, and we're going to clean house, right? We're going to start to get rid of some of this junk that's been laying around. And so some people will actually detox with these drops. And so what's that mean? They might actually feel a little bit worse initially instead of better. That's very possible. That's not a bad sign. If they're experiencing anything significant, I always suggest to cut the drops in half for a few days and then work back up to the dose that you were shooting for. And so the other thing also to remember when detoxing is to make sure you're drinking plenty of water. That's where I think a lot of people get this wrong, is they're detoxing and they're not flushing that out as they should. And so at the very least 64 ounces of water a day. That probably should be closer to half your body weight in ounces per day. And also you might want to add a little bit of either pink or Celtic salt, maybe a quarter teaspoon once or twice a day, can help replace that precious sodium and those trace minerals and electrolytes that can happen when we're detoxing. And also remember, when we lower insulin in the body, which this is powerful at lowering insulin, improving blood sugar, improving insulin sensitivity in the body, as we lower that insulin, we're also going to pull out a lot of inflammation. And we've seen this in testimonies. We see it every day. When we pull out inflammation, we're also going to pull out water. When that happens, we can also pull out some sodium, which can make us not feel too good. That can be part of, in some cases, what would be considered a detox-like response. So make sure we're putting that water back in. We're putting in some electrolytes. And usually that will make that temporary discomfort much more brief, right? And so anyway, I wanted to explain this. We're never going to gain fat with these drops, right? If somebody gains some weight, it's going to be because of one of these mechanisms, and that's okay. It's going to be short term. The body is doing what it's supposed to do, right? Our body has a healing priority list, which I've talked about several times. And that's not always fat loss as number one on your body's healing priority list. Now that may be number one on ours, maybe not number one on your body's. Maybe it's got some bigger things that it wants to accomplish before it starts really moving that fat loss. So weeks 1 through 4, we might experience weight fluctuation up, even down, and energy and digestion start to improve. And then weeks 5 and beyond, the body's going to stabilize and fat loss is going to become more consistent. So again, don't compare your journey to others. Stay consistent with these drops. That's the biggest thing. Stay consistent with these drops and you're going to see results. I hope this was helpful. God bless. Love you all.